one can interrupt my groove today. Been watching race cars move away. I just don't think that I can lose, and I might just take a cruise and let the sunshine play. Something more, something new, something you get.
Welcome back to The Approach. Another Monday, last Monday of January. Incredibly excited. Have Joe Idemy tour picks. You see him on Preferred Lines with Chad. You see him on the Power Hour with the Jock Stuff with Rick. Super excited. One of the best in the industry. When I keep saying a leader in a lot of different ways. Joe, I appreciate your time, man. Welcome. And Drew, hi to you too.
What's up, guys?
Joe, welcome, brother.
Drew, Rob, you guys have kind of owned this spot sort of on Monday nights, one of my regular ones that I like to check out in between sort of putting the kids to bed, but they are safely with my wife. I'm here for the approach. I'm ready to sort of dive right into wherever you want to take it, buddy.
Yeah, well, let's start with you if you don't mind. And I'll just kind of start us off with asking a question, and then Detroit, Dave, Drew, you kind of dive in and throw anything else you want to, Joe. And if you don't mind sharing it again, Joe, but I remember you were on Brian's show, Tappin' Birdie, and you were talking about your huge score. And I love hearing that. So if you're not sick of telling it, do you mind telling a little bit about, that six-figure, right? The six-figure score that you took last year or 2 years ago?
Yeah, so it was like 2 Augusts ago. So about a year and a half ago, Wyndham Championship. I finished second in the drive to the green that week. So it was fun, right? Like I feel like, so this term like expert gets thrown around very much. I don't consider myself that by any means, but when you look sort of at the definition of an expert, it's like knowing more about something than the average person. Like that's the only sort of prerequisite for it. So I feel like we all are that. But the bottom line is like, you got to kind of get lucky, right? So there was a good bit of luck into it. I built a lineup. I threw 3. I usually do 2 or 3 builds max. I threw one in there. I had sort of a great fun sweat over the weekend. Chad, my partner, realized that I was in first at one point on Sunday. So he sort of tweeted that out, and I was like a little upset. I'm like, oh no, this is going to end because you know how it is. You can go from first to like 100 first in a hole. So it was fun. I sort of stayed away from it. I don't want to like do this too long because I know you guys got a show, but I didn't watch it. I was following it on my phone. I was doing a little home project in our guest bathroom. And like I thought, so all my guys had finished and I was in 4th place. And in the last group that day was Rob Oppenheim, who somehow on the final hole who had gone from going off in the final group like down to like around the 10th spot. So he'd really sort of faded, was not in contention at all. Mm-hmm. And so I sort of went live on Twitter, like sort of celebrating finishing 4th, which was great. It was like, I think like 45,000.
Yeah.
I was super pumped. That's more than I
That'll do.
And I'm sort of celebrating. And as this happens live, I think it was Tambo and a couple other people realized that Oppenheim had bogeyed, which bumped, I believe it was Mark Hubbard up to a top 10 finish in my lineup. And it like vaulted me up to second, which was like a $60,000 difference. And it was just fun. Like I found out live on the internet with like a lot of my friends who were telling me, I'm like, what is going on? I'm like screaming in my backyard. So it was a ton of fun, something that I will never forget. But of course, like there's so much sort of luck involved, and it could have been anybody. It just happened to be my week. And that's kind of what we play it for, right? We know it's a gamble. We know that the lottery ticket is out there and things have to align perfectly. Mm-hmm. But that's sort of the dream that when it does, you're able to have it in the right contest and kind of score big.
Yeah, and I love that. I love also how you were kind of maybe building up the karma points a little bit, working on, I guess, remodeling the bathroom, right? Doing something around the house, building up because I know I get in trouble with the wife if I'm sweating lineups all weekend. And so if I do something around the house or something for her, I kind of get a longer leash on the weekend. So you build up those karma points. That's awesome, man. So exciting. Yeah, big time.
Karma points. Totally a believer in that. I had as well, like, so earlier that year, And eventually this is going to come back. It's not going to work out this year, but eventually it's going to come back. So I started the sort of DFS Open thing where I
Yeah.
did this whole huge event for charity. And like, I wasn't really that, I was more into the gambling side. I wasn't really that deep into DFS yet. I was throwing a couple of lineups in here and there, and I met some people. They gave me some tips and some advice. And I did like, my wife was just astonished because I did all this work basically for nothing. I just was kind of doing it as a charitable thing. And it just so happened like a couple of months later, it turned into this. And like, I have to feel somehow like the two are sort of related in a sense.
Sure. Yeah, and I remember, and I'm assuming maybe COVID had an influence of how the DFS Open, kind of maybe got interrupted. I mean, you can speak on that, but I remember seeing that, and so not jealous, but just envious of the reach that you were trying to do of just bringing people in the community together. That's kind of Drew's and I, one of our big things that we kind of want to do with this, but just time gets in the way sometimes. But anyway, of just bringing people together, because it is a great community and so special that you were able to do that. So you just mind telling us a little bit of what that was like and all the wonderful people that you got to connect with?
Yeah, sort of. So I just kind of had the idea of, so we've kind of touched on a little bit before how this sort of golf Twitter community does really feel like a lot of great dudes and like people that I want to hang out with. There's a couple of bad eggs, of course, as there is anywhere, who tend to sort of poison the space to a degree. But for the most part, it's all people like I want to hang out with, like I want to shake hands with, I want to meet. Like you got to meet Andy and Rick this past weekend. Like those are real life experiences that I was kind of trying to formulate. So had the idea that instead of us all who feel like we know each other so well, right, through Twitter, but we've never had a beer together, we've never shook hands, we've never like interacted in person. So I had this kind of idea. I was fortunate enough to sort of pitch it. I guess you could say pitch it, but ask a couple people like for help in launching it. And Jeff Feinberg was huge. Pat was huge. Ryan Baroff, who does the show with Matt Wiley, who lives down here by me, was huge in helping me. He's an ex-golf pro, so he was able to help with a lot of the logistical stuff of setting up a course and how to run a tournament. And it was awesome, man. We built it up. It blew up to something that was crazier than I could ever imagine. Like we sold out 92 spots in less than 24 hours. We had people from 36 different states all come to Florida for this thing. So it was just a really cool time. So many people got to meet, so many people that have worked together for so long had never met. Like, I don't know if you guys ever follow like the Fantasy Golf Degenerates podcast.
Oh yeah.
Kenny and Tambo, who are awesome. Like everyone loves them. They had never met each other. So like at the DFS Open was the first time they like met and hung out. So many just like little anecdotal experiences like that I thought were really cool and important. And I would love to like do something like that again. COVID kind of interrupted things down here with the course we were trying to set up this year. Seems like this shit's like never going to end, but there will be a time and a place where we can sort of make this all happen again. And hopefully that's sooner than later.
Well, so love it. Love the idea of bringing people to connect. You're changing lives. Again, yeah, I know Drew and I, we haven't met, in person, IRL, but we're hoping to get on. We're hoping to get on the golf course here soon. But again, just love that, and just everybody that helped maybe kind of build that.
Yeah.
I appreciate those connections. It's one of the most important things. But yeah, Drew, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Were you going to say something?
No, you're good. It's to Joe's point. Like it's such a good community, and like, yeah, we all have the golf that kind of brings us all together. But I feel like with golf, everybody kind of has some of the same interests, and kind of getting together with people, it just makes it more genuine, and those connections just continue to build. And to your point, it's all about who you know and getting to know people and about people, kind of off of social media and whatnot. It's very cool, but that's super awesome. The whole entire story is great. I'm sure your wife was ecstatic when you told her that you made a couple bucks and good stuff.
I remember she pulled in the driveway like with my kids, and I'm like out there like, I did it. like Rocky, and she's like, what did you do? And I'm like, I finished second. And she's like, oh, second, like great. Like, you
wow.
didn't win. And I'm like, well, second was like $119,000. So we're pretty good.
That's so awesome.
So we were able to kind of put that down. But yeah, to like it's fun, man. That's why I like coming on to meet you guys. Like, I feel like talking with people is so important, and that's hard to really have a conversation and form a real relationship over, what is it, 140 characters or whatever you get. Like, we have a sense of people, but being able to just sort of sit in like a couple of minutes that we were able to speak before we went live here is like meaningful, I think, stuff to just get to know people, man, and just enjoy it.
1,000%. You're speaking my language.
Well said,
Again,
man.
yeah, connections, especially within a community like this, when you have positive connections, man, it just does wonderful things for your individual mental and social health. But I'm a big believer in those karma points. And so if you're firing off those positive ions with all these great people like you guys,
I
man,
guess
that's
I'm doing
gonna go.
projects for the wife this weekend.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm in.
A little goes a long way.
I'm sure there's some research or science we can pull out there that says you build strong connections, your DFS lineups will will do well. Well, let's move on to talk about the Farmers. Sucks for Willie Z, awesome for Luke. Finally gets it done. What do you all think about what happened at Torrey? At the Farmers.
Go ahead, Drew.
Okay. Yeah, the one thing I'm surprised, I mean, I think all of us sitting here on what Thursday night would have expected this to either be John Rahm or Justin Thomas, the way things were kind of shaken up. Yeah, tough for Will Zalatoris. I think the amazing part to me was, like, when we think about the way it ended and then the playoff and then Luke List kind of getting what is one of the worst breaks off the tee, his ball's kind of plugged in the lie, next to Zalatoris, and he still finds a way to make birdie. You hit it to 6 inches. And it's just Zalatoris' putter let him down, as it's done over and over again. And I know there's a bunch of short putts in there that he probably wishes he had back. But I think, and you guys would probably agree, Will Zalatoris' time is not if, it's when. And he'll get it. But yeah, it was a good tournament. I enjoyed watching it. And I always like great field last week. And it's shocking that, the way Luke List went out and got it on Sunday with that 66 was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I thought a couple of things that sort of I took away from it. One, I totally agree with your notion on Zalatoris. It felt like, I'm not sure if I even tweeted this or not, but it felt like he had, just looking at him, aged and matured, like, from the last time that I saw him. He looked stronger. He just had a different look about him. So I think that you can tell that he's put in a lot of work, both on his game physically and mentally, to sort of get to that point. You could see how much that putt that sort of wiggled left stung for him. Hopefully he's able to use that for motivation. Like, I think it was nice that List got in there. There were a lot of guys that had chances and really just like, I had a Justin Rose ticket and he's sitting out there on 18. And I think that, from my perspective, it looked like he took a hybrid because he was afraid that 3-wood was going to be long, which a lot of guys were long there, right? Just over the back of the green. He's like, I've got to eagle this because Rahm's coming. All these people are coming. Like, I've got to get something really close to the pin and stop it up front there. And he hit it in the water. And there were a couple people who did that when really he should have just taken the 3-wood, taken the water out of play and got up and down for birdie. And he's in a playoff. So I think a lot of people were in sort of that similar situation. So it was kind of shocked to see how it kind of all played out. List was just kind of sitting there in the clubhouse. And to what we were speaking about earlier, mentioned a lot of the sort of just remaining positive and keeping a good outlook. And through all the struggles and the close calls that he's been through, he had a strong sort of family unit that supported him. And he just kind of knew his time was coming. And I love to see guys sort of break through like that. My other big takeaway was my guy. Wait, am I pointing right? My guy over here, it appears on Twitter now, is, what are you 7'4" or 7'5"?
Yeah, seriously.
Oh my God. Like, dude, I'm so surprised that took off. Like, out of all, meeting Rick and Andy was awesome. I always knew and just assumed they were great guys. When you meet them in person, you're like, gosh, these guys are just wonderful human beings. And I took a picture. Then all everyone kept talking about was the height difference. I'm not even like that tall. I don't think. But
were you standing on a hill, or what was the deal?
Yeah, right.
I mean,
it's good.
I'm one of those guys that go on the tippy toes because I don't want to be the shortest guy in the room. But yeah, I don't know. That was really fun. But it was just so great. So great to be out there with them. Again, incredible, just human beings. I'm going to give a story that just kind of blew me away when we were walking a few holes with Rick and Andy. And this little boy about 12 years old came up to Rick and says, "Gosh, are you kind of Rick Run Good?" I think he asked from like the YouTube channel. And he says yes, and he asked for a selfie, and obviously Rick obliged and took a selfie with the young kid. And then the young kid kind of leaves and says, "I watch every single one of your episodes." And obviously this guy's not, a gambler DFS guy. I know, Rick kind of has, kind of just a golf, kind of, it's a great golf podcast in general, but this little kid just loving the product that he puts out, and then just the type of person and how Rick handled it and how he was so kind and gentle with the guy. It was just awesome to see. It was just so cool. Again, so great people. And San Diego, everybody was so kind out there. I was just blown away of all just the good energy, the good vibes that people were throwing out. And Tori knows how to host an event. I was so impressed with just the infrastructure that they set up for the tournament, how it played out. I just had a blast. The weather was perfect. It was just a ball. It was so much fun. Had a Willie's ticket. Little bum that didn't hit, but good to see Luke. Good to see Luke. We've been on Luke a while.
It was really nice to see. I feel like it's been a while, but to see like bogey in play, right?
Yeah,
yes. Like, it felt like it's been forever. Where like your guy can either birdie or bogey. Like there's a huge swing available on every hole versus just like, is he going to birdie or is he going to par? Like if he doesn't birdie, it's an auto par. So it was really nice to see. Like some players struggle a bit. It was nice to see the length. It was just, I know we're kind of back to sort of short wedge fest a little bit this week, which we'll get into. But yeah, it felt like it had been a while since we saw these guys really have to grind it out.
Well, and also one other thing, I was super impressed, and I've been at golf tournaments before, but it has been a while because of COVID and everything. But just how impressed, how big some of the golfers are. I'll give you an example of like Michael Thompson. I was walking with him a little bit, and especially before the beard. And no, I'm not trying to hate on Michael, but he just looked kind of like a scrawny, like regular type of looking dude. But following him, the dude is big, and he doesn't skip leg day, and can smash it off the tee. And I was just super impressed of all the golfers. Even following Justin for a little bit, Justin Thomas. Yeah, he's kind of thin and a little lanky, but you got close to him, and the dude's not in bad shape, and just blown away with all that. So, maybe that's just like random. And I was super impressed, and rightfully so. They're professional athletes, but I'm just kind of impressed with how big these guys are.
The game's changed a lot, right? I mean, from when pre-Tiger to kind of like the workout regimens and things these guys are on. Like, yeah, JT's got like that elastic rubber band effect where he can move it out there because of how good he turns and how flexible he is. But yeah, there's I would say a good 85% of the guys are in the gym kind of, and it's not all bulk and trying to get big. It's flexibility and trying to, not get injured. But yeah, it's impressive. Like even if you go and see Rory, for example, and I know he wasn't there, but like Rory's no bigger than I am. And just
well, that's not saying much, Drew.
Yeah, well, that's fair. But like the ability, I know he's not 7'3" like you, but the ability for him to move it's just incredible what some of these guys can do. And it's fun.
Totally agree.
Well, good deal. Well, let's kind of move on. And Joe, if you don't mind sharing, because didn't you have kind of toward the end of the fall swing into the kind of start of the new year, you had like 3 or so outrights in a row. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes. And I almost had 4. I was really close to 4 in a row with a ticket there at the Sony that ended up getting burned. But yeah, so I kind of, I switched a little bit of my strategy late in the fall last year where I went, I was doing a lot of top 10 and top 20s and sprinkling in some matchups and every now and then occasionally doing first round leader and all this stuff. And I kind of realized after doing it for a while that I had my most success, like where I was making money is in the outright tickets. Like some of those would help me break even on a week. But in the end, I just kind of switched over my strategy in terms of making a betting card to just playing outrights and allocating all my bankroll or whatever you want to call it for that week into that. And had a good little run starting from the start of the season there with the Fortinet. I had Homa. So it's been a good little run. You know how this is. You guys know there's ups and downs, and you just got to kind of not get too reckless and understand there's going to be peaks and valleys, and you just kind of play the long game and you hope to hit 7, 8, 9 winners throughout the season. I'm a big proponent and like taking your chances, betting these long shot guys, not really going for the top of the board, because you hit 1 or 2 guys at 100 to 1 through the year, it can pay for so many weeks of bad bets. You know what I mean? You get one guy at 125 to 1 that can pay off 7 or 8 straight weeks of losing. So that's kind of the beauty of betting golf is you're going to find those guys. Those guys hit often. It happens every single week. It's not a crazy like I think you could get the Bengals this year like mid-season around like 30, 28, 30 to 1. Because I remember looking at it. It was like week 11 or something. I'm like, I kind of like the Bengals at like 25 to 1. I'm like, those seem like good odds, but like that's a crazy circumstance what the Bengals have done, and you're only getting 25 to 1 for it. You know what I mean? So it's like it's very unlikely in a lot of these other sports that you're going to be able to have the opportunity to hit these huge tickets. So it's a unique spot that golf is in. I think a lot of the reason why we're seeing an influx of new audience people and people that are sort of taking in the content because they realize how fun the sweat is.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. But you know, Drew, I'll let you speak real quick, so I'll just shut up and listen. But I'll ask you, Joe, because you're obviously very good at what you do, and so if you don't, I know a magician never reveals his secrets, but what is your strategy? And
he's a magician too, by the way.
yeah.
I've seen it.
Yeah. So my strategy, it's kind of a blend, right? There's different like molds, I think, of gamblers out there, and I'm more of a gut sort of feel, eye test type of person. But I do a stat model. I will look at that. I try to put that out every week. I have notes and sort of a Google Doc going back to like 2017 of the courses. And usually after every week, I'll jot down, 7 or 8 things that I remember. Who was top 5? Who made a run on Sunday? How was the course playing? Just so I kind of have a reference point there to go off of. I'm a big, I guess not, I don't want to say big, but I'm more than the average sort of person, I think, in golf Twitter, heavy on course history, I would say, which I know a lot of people are totally anti it. A lot of people sprinkle it in. I think it matters. And a lot of the players, because I listen to a lot of the interviews, and they'll tell you that it matters. Like the majority of players will tell you that there's spots that they feel comfortable, there's spots that they don't like. If you just take the time to listen, and as to a much lower degree, but as a former, quote unquote athlete and playing sports growing up, and I played sports in college, you understand that there's certain environments that are conducive to success and certain that aren't. You know what I'm saying? So if you feel good and you're going to a spot where you have a success rate, you're more likely to play better. So I put more than the average sort of ingredient of course history into the mix. But ultimately for me, it's a lot of just kind of playing the numbers game, right? And you see a guy and you see a little bit of drift there, and you think that he's an elite player and can win, and you play it.
Yeah, no, I do too. And the other thing that you said that kind of I think other people should pay attention to. You mentioned, you're doing your outright card, you're doing top 20, top 40, top 10. It's like you got to figure out what works best for you, right? Just because all these people on Twitter are posting their card and doing all these different things, that might not necessarily be the recipe for you. And to your point, like if you hit that 100 to 1 guy and you're just playing outrights, then you're banked for months, and you can continue to try to throw the dart at one of these higher guys as far as the outrights go. So I think it's important for people to kind of figure out what works best for them and not just feel like, hey, everybody's saying and putting this up, this is exactly how I need to do it. I need to do first round leader and all this. Just figure out what works best for you and just kind of go there. And you've clearly done a wonderful job at that.
Yeah. Thank you.
And so I got to ask, because I'm curious, one of the reasons I first started, I don't know, doing this or getting on Twitter, whatever, is following the lunchtime long shots. And so is that lunchtime? Are you working and then you go into the car and you do your lunchtime long shots, or I'm just curious. I want to know totally. The back end. Yeah.
I have like a 9 to 5 job. And I kind of keep separate from this, right? Like I don't really like I don't hide it, but like I don't tell people that I'm like doing this stuff. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a different life, I guess. And they're just colleagues, and I'm not really close friends with them. But yeah, so this is how like I started. I guess my account was I was posting things and I had like 50 followers, and I think I just started doing these little videos, and like I realize totally like I don't think it's great content. I realize that there's like a cheesiness and like a corniness to it. But I think that's part of like why
What makes
people
it
might
awesome.
like it. And it's like
Yeah.
it's just normal. It's not like over edited and
Yeah.
cut up and like all this other stuff. It's just like any of us. Like you go out to lunch and like I we don't have a lunchroom at work, so I'll typically go to a place and get a sandwich or whatever I do, and I'll just sit in my car and I'll listen to podcasts or something like that. You know what I'm saying? While I eat. So I just started sitting there and like trying to rap for 2 minutes and 20 seconds or whatever the time limit is that they give me, and just talk about some long shots. And a couple of people, I think Feinberg was one of the first ones to retweet it, and people seem to like it. So it's like it's something, I guess, unique and something that's different. I don't think anyone else is doing. It's quick, it's like brief, it's like not meant to be like totally serious, but I think people sort of like that part of it a little bit. That
Yeah.
it's just like there's a normalcy to it and like an unprofessionalism, I guess, that is
Yeah.
like there's there's none of this setup. There's no lights in front of me. It's just like a guy sitting in his car, like eating his lunch, talking about golf picks. So I don't know. I guess I'm gonna keep doing it. I enjoy doing it. I find it makes me look forward to Tuesdays at lunchtime, and it seems like
Yeah.
like from the traction, like it's my most liked and engaged
Mhm.
thing that I do every week. So I'm just gonna keep rolling with it.
People look forward to it, man. Like
Yeah.
people look forward to it, and you got to admit it's gotten bigger. Like you got some music going now. You know, you're pumping. You know, your sponsors or whatnot, and I think it's genuine and it's just great content, man. So I'm sure that's why everybody is tuning in all the time. It's definitely something I look forward to on Tuesdays.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm trying to make little subtle improvements, but keep the genesis of it.
Yeah,
Like
man.
you know what I'm
Absolutely.
saying?
Well, yeah, and it's an extension of you. Not that you're unprofessional, but more of the analogy that it's like, you're not getting a beer with some of your coworkers. But I think what really draws people to it is like, yeah, it's who you are, and you get to see kind of the personality, and it's a personality that, gosh, I'd really like to get a beer with this guy and talk about golf. It's fun and it's relaxing. So yeah, it's just an extension of you and the good dude that you are, similar to you, Drew, and how well you do your kind of golf kind of training videos, if we'll call them that, your swing tip. So it's
Yeah.
extension of you, and it's cool to see the person and not all the kind of over edited stuff. Even though the over edited, the production value is great, and there's a place for that too.
Yeah.
Well,
Totally.
if you don't mind, guys, you mind if we kind of hop over and kind of take a look and run down just the DraftKings board real quick, and we'll talk about Pebble. And I know you have your show, Preferred Lives, and so we don't want to give it all your kind of insight away. So just feel comfortable sharing what you're sharing. But is that cool, guys?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah. So let's start, and Joe, you can kind of lead us off. We usually go from we'll kind of make it a broader lens right now because we're running low on time, but maybe just 9K and above. So Kevin Kisner up to Cantlay. Who's like one or two guys that, Joe, you kind of have an early lean toward on a Monday night?
Yeah, so I don't mind going back to Justin Rose here. He's kind of the one. So usually when this stuff comes out on Monday, I'll build like I call it a dummy lineup, and I'll just like initial without looking at stats. Like I'd throw in the $5, like my very first gut instincts of the board, and I'll throw that out there. I find myself mostly in the 9Ks. I like Berger, so I know that you, Rob, are kind of like really into sort of finding leverage plays in DFS. And that's something that I never really like. When I won my big ticket, I was of the mindset of like, I don't factor in ownership at all. And so like I played Webb at the Wyndham that week, who was like 38%. I played Sung Jae, who was like 28%, which are ridiculous, but there's still 90,000 people in that contest. And I finished second and had a unique lineup with the two chalkiest plays. So like at that point, my mindset was like, all these people that are pivoting off a great play and an obvious play to get someone 10% less, like isn't the move that I'm going to make. But I'm starting to kind of come around to it a little bit. I think there's a fine line, right? Like like where does the ownership sort of change in your mind from Berger? Like, when can you go from Berger to Spieth? Like, because if Spieth is 5% less owned, I think that Berger's a much better play, right? But is he going to be 20? Like, where does that line? Do you have a definitive marker in there when you sort of analyze the leverage of these guys up top?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, because I think that's the hardest thing for people just to conceptualize beginning in kind of DFS. And so, yeah, it's not black and white. So you have to take a tournament by tournament, and obviously tournament by tournament means, like, you can't look at a small sample size and say, gosh, at the Palmetto last year, no chalk hit, 6 was like 2%. So then every tournament is like that. Well, it's not the case. You got to take it, look at a large sample size. So there's not a real, black and white idea I have, or a number specifically, a fade or not fade. I kind of try to, there's always question marks with golfers, and the less question marks then mean, okay, that guy might be good chalk. So if I have, Cantlay, let's just pretend he might be, because this is kind of a weaker field, he might be close to 30% owned this week. And I can't say, well, he's chalk, so that's an automatic fade. That's just blindly throwing darts. So I have to see, let's just say he has great course history, he's coming in good form, less question marks. Let's just pretend Spieth is, just the name is carrying 20% ownership. I do not think that'll be the case, but let's just say, well, then Spieth brings up tons of question marks. The current form, he's actually, added some strokes gained data. He's coming in third worst in the whole field. So all that brings, so that says to me, there's a lot of unknowns, and there's unknowns within golf. There's levels of randomness and luck. And so you incorporate that. And so with all that question marks, that might be, okay, let me combine that question marks, time his ownership, and that might equal, that equation might equal, he might be a good spot to circle and say leverage off. But that is where the handicapping comes in. And there's so many good handicappers on Twitter. And so instead of just handicapping the board like we do for outrights, you want to use that same skill to, like, handicap to find the right spots to leverage, not just blindly leverage. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally.
Yeah. Good thought. And that's a great question. And I love the roast call too. Drew, who are you maybe looking at early on a Monday?
Yeah, no, I'm actually in on Justin Rose as well. Just kind of fading. I don't want to say I'm completely fading the top of the board, but I will go with Cameron Tringali. Real nice week last week. Just seems like his game fits here well. I mean, outside of even strokes gain data, the other kind of where I think that there is some value to your point, and I'm all like with Rob, if you love a guy and you think he's going to play well, just play him. It doesn't even matter where he's at. You just pivot elsewhere. But I will go with Matt Fitzpatrick, and I know his win record over on American soil is not there, but talk about a game that is perfect for this golf course. I read a statistic from PGA Splits earlier. Hardest golf course to putt from 0 to 15 feet, which I find interesting. Matt Fitzpatrick, an elite putter. It's going to be a lot of wedges. He's not an overly long guy. So I would go with Tringali and Fitzpatrick in this kind of 9K range for me.
I love it. Well, one of my favorite guys, and I'm interested to see his ownership number, is Kisner. And so Drew and I talk a lot about, like, progression and trending, with ball striking as we're looking at strokes gain data. Kisner kind of trending pretty nicely, especially compared to what he was 24 rounds ago. But we also talk a lot about how different types of biases come into maybe rostering a player. And part of me, I'm going to give an example of that. Part of me wants to go back to Willie Z, because one of my favorite golfers is Adam Scott, and he was on a No Laying Up podcast, and they talked about if Adam Scott didn't kind of choke at the Open when he had four-shot lead with 4 to go, would he have won the Masters? And I think Tringali, lost on 18 one year and then came back to win the Phoenix a couple years ago. And so that's has me, oh gosh, even though that Willie Z was heartbroken last week, maybe he comes back and just ready to fire this week. And that's a bias. There's no back data to that, but that was just something I wonder, and maybe making me lean to Willie Z.
Yeah, I was looking at it too. I like a lot of those 9K guys. You mentioned Kisner, and an interesting thing. So he's been very vocal in the past, and they're kind of old quotes. So I kind of wanted to bring up this point, but he's talked, this was like 2-3 years ago, about how he hates POA, right? He can't stand it because he feels like he's such a pure putter and it brings a randomness into play. But he's not bad at POA. If you look at, when I look at the last 36 rounds, he's 11th in the field in strokes gained putting on POA. Bermuda, which is his favorite surface, he's 10th. So he's like basically equal from his favorite surface in terms of stats to POA. Actually, bent grass is by far his worst putting surface, which is like, I think he's 80th over the last 36 rounds. So I think that, things change. People are going to bring up this quote a lot. I saw, I think even Steve Bamford, who actually picked Kisner this week, I always read his article, mention that he does not like POA grass at all. And I think a lot of people are going to sort of hold on to that quote because he was just being very honest. But recently he's putting very well on the surface, and we know that his confidence in his game typically rides with that putter. So I think that, everything else is lining up correctly for him. If you can sort of buy into that this week, under like 7,200 yards, all three courses, it should be a great spot for him right there at 9K even, I think is a good spot.
Yeah. And I actually, oh, sorry, Rob. I was going to say, just to kind of piggyback off that, he's also been very vocal on there's specific courses that he has absolutely no shot at winning at based off distance. Yes. And there's specific courses where he needs to excel his game. This is one of those weeks that all those kind of things add up for him. So, yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, Evan brings up a great point here in the chat here. That is, if he's coming to Pebble here, he's signing up for 6-hour rounds. So then you're coming in with the mindset of, okay, it's going to be a little bit of a grind. And maybe if he's coming in with a little bit idea that it's going to be a grind, he'll recognize or maybe have a little bit more patience with the POA putting surface. I hope that's just a narrative, but if I'm trying to justify or rationalize to play Kisner, I like it. But yeah, Joe, I love bringing up that thought. And maybe, I don't know when he made that quote, but I'm hoping maybe it was 10 years ago. Maybe a little seasoned Kevin Kisner kind of matures a little bit. But let's go down to the 8K range. Yeah, let's not include 7K because that's a big old one. 8K, who are we looking at, Joe?
I don't mind Matt Jones to bounce back a little bit. He played really well with the Century. It seems like a good spot for him. Like the guys that I had kind of honed in on up front, like I loved almost all of the 9K range from Rose, Tringali, Power, Fitzpatrick, Streelman, Kisner. I loved all those guys. So from where I'm leaning right now, it's probably stack some of them and some low 7s and some 6s and maybe fade the top and maybe sort of missing out on a little bit of this 8K range. But I know there's a lot to like about Mito. I have a sort of feeling about Matt Jones. Evan brought up a great point. And anytime you introduce new factors into the equation, right? There's several of them this week, just as there was at the Amex. 6-hour rounds, that's not normal. You're only playing with one other PGA Tour player within your group. That's not normal. 3 different golf courses, that's really not normal. 54-hole cut, that's not normal. All of this kind of stuff, the more factors that you introduce into the equation, the more random of a result that you can potentially get. So when you're really digging into strokes gain data, it can be a lot easier to forecast something at a tournament like the Farmers or at the Waste Management. This week, like it may not be a bad spot where even if someone isn't playing well and it doesn't line up great, if they're 4% owned in the 8K range, just throw them in there, right? Because there's so many randomness to this type of event like we saw with Swafford. I think you can take more chances in a tournament like this just because it can be so hard to predict.
Yeah, and Drew, I'll let you go real quick, but I just want to say that is such a brilliant point. And we talk often on here, and Drew, you bring it up a great deal, is that, yeah, when there's a tournament with more randomness comes in, and this is a DFS show, so maybe not so much betting outrights or kind of in the betting market, but within DFS, why take on let's just say that Lucas Glover is going to project to be 25% owned, and there comes with some question marks there. It's Lucas Glover. Why bite on a guy that we have less of a strong feeling about at 20% owned when there's already more variables here? And so there's that likely that the leverage would work. Now, not so much like we talked about at Cantlay, but as you get down here. And so, yeah, that's the thing we brought up at the Amex of when there's so much unknowns already in golf and you sprinkle on a ton more, what leverage do you gain by biting the chalk? So excellent point.
Yeah, No, I agree. And to jump off of that, or jump right back on it rather, a guy I kind of
Jump
like in
on
that
it.
range is Brian Harmon.
Yeah.
I mean, last time we were at the AMAX, similar 3 courses, same 6-hour mess. He hadn't been playing great going into that tournament. He's plus 13 strokes gained total, had a really nice week. Another golf course that Brian Harmon's not overly long, sets up well for him. He's a great putter of the golf ball. I like him a lot this week in that position. And clearly, recency shows us that he can kind of play well in these circumstances. Now that it's a completely different golf courses, 3 different golf courses, but I like the way that he played last time we saw him. Before that, it was kind of a mixed bag. I remember there was times last year Brian Harmon was playing really, really well, got up to be a $9,600 golfer on some weeks. Then people got off of him because of his play. I think this is a good week to get back on him.
Love it.
Cool.
I love the Brian Harmon call. I like 2 guys. The first is probably going to be a big chalk, but I might have to bite the chalk because there's a lot of less question marks for me, at least. And that's Russell Knox. Comes in over the last 24 rounds, comes into the field ranked second on greens and regulation gain. He's 10th on approach, 9th in ball striking, 1 in good drives, fairways gain. He ranks 8th. That gives him a number 1 over the last 24 rounds. My model, I think, will be popular, but surprised Russell Knox was that high. And then I like the gym rats. I like big lift and Michael Thompson to kind of come back. So like the big guy, Michael, like the big guy. All right, well, let's get in. I know I kind of cheated. I guess
You did. You absolutely
I know.
cheated.
I'm sorry. All right, so I'm going to shut up and listen now. 7K range. Joe, who are you leaning to?
Yeah, I looked a little bit at Nick Taylor. I thought about him. I really like 2 guys down here in the low range. One is Matt Neesmith, who has a couple of good, I believe, a 16th and 11th the last 2 times at this event. Was really impressed with how he played last week, and it seemed like I was following him. I bet him a couple times in a matchup against Munoz that he won, and was really impressed with. So I was following him on Shot Tracker a lot. He's picked up significant distance to me recently. And just looking at that, he's obviously, his strength is his sort of wedge play on these shorter courses. He seems to find himself at home in those events. And another, I'm really high on Sahith.
Yeah.
I think that he's just got a ton of talent. Haskins Award winner, won in college. Has played really well sort of coming up, has not broke through yet, but I thought was very solid last week. I think that his strength, which a lot of people may look at him and not assume is his strength, he's awesome around the greens. He's a great chipper. He's got great hands. He's got incredible touch. He's creative. He can get himself up and down. And on a course like Pebble with these sort of tiny little minuscule greens that you've got to hit, the ability, and we've seen guys like Day and Spieth and Phil here always have a lot of success because they're able to sort of, when they miss these green surfaces, really get themselves up and down at a high clip. And I think that he has that ability.
I agree.
I love
That's
it.
a great
I
call.
love it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to go back with Aaron Rye. I know I've talked quite a bit about him on the show, but I mean, everything's there for him. A fantastic ball striker. His entire game's good. Needs to clean up the putting. Last 24, he's at 100th. But I think the DFS community is starting to kind of catch up that Aaron Rye is a good player. As you can see, kind of getting up to 7,900 this week. I like him, though. I will play him. I do like Matt Neesmith as well. But then I will also go with Taylor Pendrith. Top 20 last week. Again, a guy that does a lot of good things in around this golf course. I think this golf course suits him well, or these 3 golf courses. The one nice thing with handicapping this tournament is we have 3 different golf courses, Spyglass being the hardest of the 3, but similar yardages. It's not like we're playing one big golf course to one short golf course.
Yeah.
So they're somewhat comparable, which makes it nice when we don't have to completely think of this completely different. Of course, you might find some advantage in showdown playing guys that aren't on Spyglass or whatnot. But those would be my 2 guys in this range.
Love it. Gosh, you guys are on fire. And I'll tell you, I've followed Rye. He looked great. 2-glove Rye looked awesome. Yeah. And so I didn't mean to steal everyone's thunder with Knox. I'll give just 2 others. Joel Damon, surprisingly enough, ranks 19th on approach, 13th in ball striking, 13th in fairways gain. Big Sahith guy. I really like him. the other that I think is kind of trending under the radar, but I guess he won't be under the radar, but that's Grayson Sigg. In the last 12 rounds, played top 10 almost in the whole field and just some strokes gained data. And that's just ball striking off the tee and approach. Really like Grayson Sigg at the low 6K range. Coming into the sicko range, hashtag Blatant Golf. Who's a one or two guys before we kind of shut this thing up and kind of put it to bed? Who's one guy or two guys in the 6K range that Joe that you like?
Look, I've been beating the drum on on Svensson for a while.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's awesome. I talk to people down here that know him well, and he's playing awesome. A couple of my buddies are at the club, down here in Florida with like Corey Connors is there. There's a bunch of really good players, and they're all like Svensson's kicking all their ass. So I'm just really high on his game. He's great with his long irons. I think that he's a winner. He's won at college. He's won sort of the big money classic or whatever they had down here. He's won almost 3 times last year on the Corn Ferry Tour. I just think that he's a really good player, and his ball striking numbers are fantastic. They're going to pop in pretty much any stat model that you run, which of course is indicative, obviously at Pebble. His approach and ball striking is great. The other guy I was kind of looking at who I don't know as much about, but I'm really seeing a lot of sort of green when I look over at Fantasy National and different stat spots, is Austin Eckroat. So I know that Andy, who I talk to a lot, has had great things to say about him in the past. So I kind of have had him circled a little bit. And then, right, like just to speak of the randomness, like Ted Potter Jr. won this event. He's played Dustin Johnson here.
God, if you look at Ted Potter's Fantasy National, it's
all red.
It's not good.
Sure there was no green on Ted Potter coming into this.
That dark.
So, I think you can definitely take a couple of dart throws here in the 6K range. Who do you guys like?
Yeah, so for me, it's Peter Malnati. Ball striking's there, right? And the other thing that I like, so he's top 30 in strokes gained approach last 24. But to your point, Joe, it's going to take playing well around the greens. I mean, being that these are the smallest greens as far as Pebble's concerned that we see all year on tour, you're going to have to get up and down. And he ranks 16th in strokes gained around the greens. I think he had a great week last week at 6,800. He's a guy I can go back to. Just going off recent form again, Austin Smotherman's another person that I might consider down here in the 6K range. Had a great week last week. I'm not as confident in that play as I am the Malnati play, but those are two guys I like down here. I mean, Dylan Fratelli always makes me think of him. But I stopped pretty quickly this week, so we'll see what happens.
I love the Eckroat. It's hard not to like Eckroat. That's a great call. A big Chevin Chappell guy maybe this week. The Chappie. Gained 3.2 at the Farmers on approach last week. Now what he'll do is he might be first round leader on Thursday, but then you're sweating him to make the cut on Friday. But he's kind of he's coming back from some injuries, kind of like Chappie there. Like Kodaira, all caps, last name Kodaira. Really big fan of him. And then I'm kind of cheating, name another guy that I just kind of feeling good about, trending surprisingly well. And that's James Hahn. Not so great course history, but I might throw a dart or two at James Hahn to kind of maybe make some noise at 6,700. Well, guys, I appreciate that. Anything else before we kind of wrap this up? Just overall thoughts on Pebble or anything at all?
No, I mean, listen, I appreciate you guys. It was a pleasure sort of coming on here and getting to know you guys a little bit more and speaking to your audience. So I appreciate the opportunity. Would love to sort of talk more soon. I'm looking forward to this week. It's not my favorite, these sort of mixed course events, but we're going to get to Waste Management, which is always fun. And then we come over to sort of my coast here in the Florida swing where I'm excited for the Honda. I think I'm going to go to the Players this year. So excited to sort of take in the next month or so here at golf. It should be good stuff.
I love it. It's about to get real exciting. This is when things start to kind of cook in the oven in the golf world.
Yeah, this is the end of the course rotation. We get Waste Management, we get Riv. Joe, thanks for coming on. Hey, next time you're in the Cleveland area and there's not foots of snow on the ground, give me a call. We'll get out, have a beer, play some golf.
Absolutely, man. That's home to me still, is the Cleveland area. So I look forward to coming back there always. I'll definitely give you a shout when I do.
Sounds great, man. Hey, thanks again, brother.
All right, guys.
All right, guys. See you later. Y'all do something you want to do. Good luck this week.